The air was cool as the sun began to peek over the horizon. Clora crouched low on the ridge, scanned the OpFor camp through her binoculars. Below, the Wolfmobile sat proudly in the center of the camp, a symbol of the insult they'd endured the night before. The faint smell of dust and sweat lingered as the rest of her team quietly moved into position, each person more determined than ever to take back what was theirs. Clora had a fierce gleam in her eyes as she surveyed the camp. She turned to Desera, who was already checking her sniper rifle, making sure every piece was in perfect working order. Desera, I want you up high. Find a perch where you can get a full view of the camp. Ashley, you're with her as a spotter. Take Bravo and stay hidden until the signal. If things go south, I want you covering our retreat. Desera nodded, already in her element. The faintest smile tugged at the corners of her mouth as she scanned for her vantage point. I've got it, she said, locking her gaze on a small outcropping overlooking the entire camp. Ashley knelt beside her, preparing her equipment, while Bravo, the sleek, agile wolf, was already sniffing the air, catching the faintest traces of the enemy. Good, Clora muttered, shifting her attention to Karina. The seasoned warrior had been waiting patiently, her blades glinting faintly in the early light. I want you to do what you do best. See if there's a way to slip Derren into that Wolfmobile. If we can get control of that minigun, we can rain hell on them before they even know what's happening. Karina grinned. She loved the challenge of infiltration, and her mind was already working on how to get close without being detected. Consider it done. I'll have him in that thing before they even know it. Satisfied, Clora turned to Gunnar. His presence was steady, a wall of strength they all drew confidence from. His prosthetic arm gleamed in the low light, a reminder of both his loss and his resilience. What do you want me doing? Gunnar asked, his voice low but eager for action. Clora gave him a hard look, one of trust and pride. You're with me, Alpha 2. We're going into the heart of this. I want the command tent taken out and their communications severed. Once we hit them hard, they'll scatter. When they do, I want you to be the hammer that drives them into the ground. Gunnar nodded, a wolfish grin appearing as he glanced down at Alpha, the massive dire wolf standing at his side, ready for the hunt. Let's give them something to remember. Finally, Clora turned to Eli, who had been silently prepping her gear, her magical aura calm but sharp. Eli, I want traps set in the ravine. That's the best cover for them if they try to retreat. Make sure it's hell for them to get through. Eli gave a brief nod, her eyes already glowing faintly as she activated a small device in her hand. They won't make it far, she said confidently, knowing her magic-infused gadgets would create just the distraction they needed. Clora gave one last look around, checking on each member of the team. Her heart swelled with pride. They were more than a team. They were the pack. And now it was time to show these interlopers exactly what that meant. Everyone get into position. When you're set, let me know. I'll be the distraction with Omega. Once I draw them out, Derren, I want you to unleash hell with that minigun. Let's take our camp back. The minutes ticked by in silence as the team moved into position. Karina slipped into the shadows like a ghost, her movements almost imperceptible as she neared the Wolfmobile. Desera and Ashley, accompanied by Bravo, had already taken their sniper position high above the camp, the scope of Desera's rifle trained on the command tent, ready to eliminate any high-value targets that might emerge. Clora crouched behind a rocky outcrop with Omega at her side, the massive half-dire wolf, half-grey wolf panting softly, his eyes trained on the camp like a predator stalking its prey. Desera in position, came the soft whisper over the comms. Karina ready? Another voice crackled quietly in Clara's ear. Clora took a deep breath. Everything was set. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows over the camp. The OpFor was still emerging from their tents, groggy and unaware of the ambush that was about to unfold. All right, let's do this, Clora whispered. With a quick motion, she and Omega stepped out from their cover, walking directly into the open. The two of them moved with a casual air, just enough to catch the attention of the few OpFor soldiers on guard. Almost immediately, there was a stir of confusion in the camp. "That's the signal," Derren muttered, his eyes narrowing as he watched the OpFor scramble to react. He crouched low, using Karina's cover to slip into the Wolfmobile, unnoticed. As soon as he was behind the turret, a grin spread across his face. The minigun hummed to life under his fingertips. "Time to play," Derren whispered, his finger tightening on the trigger. In a burst of gunfire, the Wolfmobile's minigun roared to life, spraying non-lethal rounds in a hail of firepower. The sound was deafening, and the camp erupted into chaos as OpFor soldiers dove for cover. The minigun shredded through tents and gear, forcing the OpFor into a desperate scramble. Some tried to return fire, but they were completely outgunned. Derren's aim was precise, his grin widening as he enjoyed the upper hand. "Come on! You wanted a fight!" he shouted over the roar of the gun. "Let's see what you've got!" The OpFor scattered, just as Clora had predicted. Soldiers sprinted toward the ravine, seeking cover from the relentless assault. But Eli had anticipated this. The moment the first group of soldiers reached the ravine, her traps activated. A series of magical tripwires detonated, sending sparks of energy through the air, disorienting the soldiers and forcing them back into the open. "Perfect," Eli muttered from her hidden position, watching the chaos unfold with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Gunner and Alpha had slipped into the camp's center during the confusion. They quickly approached the command tent, where the OpFor's communications system was housed. "Take out their comms and they're done," Gunner whispered to Alpha. The massive wolf leaped forward, tearing through the tent's entrance with a powerful swipe. Gunner followed, his prosthetic arm whirring as he crushed the radio equipment underfoot, severing the OpFor's ability to coordinate. "We're in," Gunner reported over the comms. "Comms are down." With their communications destroyed and their forces in disarray, the OpFor had no choice but to fall back. Clora watched as the last few soldiers began retreating toward the ravine, exactly where they wanted them. "Everyone converge on the ravine," Clora ordered. "We're finishing this." As the team moved in, Desera called out from her sniper perch. "I've got eyes on the last group. They're pinned, but they've still got fight left in them." "Let's end it," Clora said, her voice full of confidence. Derren, still manning the Wolfmobile, grinned. "Time to bring out the big guns." With a final burst from the minigun, Derren obliterated the last remaining pockets of resistance, forcing the OpFor into complete retreat. As the dust settled, Aliana, Jewel, and Sergeant Major Kick watched from their vantage point on the nearby cliff, observing the entire battle with interest. "Looks like they've got this one wrapped up," Aliana remarked, a slight smile on her lips. "Yeah, but don't tell them that," Kick said with a laugh. "I've still got a few tricks up my sleeve." Down below, the team regrouped at the center of the camp, the Wolfmobile parked triumphantly behind them. Gunner shook his head, staring at the damage the minigun had caused. "You really enjoyed that, didn't you?" Gunner asked, looking over at Derren. Derren shrugged, tossing the keys to the Wolfmobile in the air and catching them again. "Maybe a little." The team shared a collective laugh, their victory sealed. But as they gathered around for one final meal of MREs, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. They had earned every bit of their bragging rights. As the dust settled on the battlefield, the familiar figure of Sergeant Major Keek, accompanied by Aliana and Jewel, descended from their vantage point. The Sergeant Major, a seasoned warrior who had overseen countless training exercises, raised his hand to his radio and calmly called into the receiver. "End of exercise," Kick's voice echoed through the air, the signal marking the conclusion of the wargame. He approached Gunner and the rest of the pack, his stern expression betraying a hint of approval as he surveyed the scene of their victory. "Good job, Gunner," Kick said with a nod. "You and your team put on one hell of a show." The OpFor team, now returning from the ravine and the wreckage of their camp, began to gather around. The soldiers, still in awe of the battle they'd just experienced, stood silently as they gazed at the large wolves, Alpha, Omega, and Bravo, who loomed over the scene, their presence both intimidating and majestic. The soldiers exchanged glances, clearly impressed by the sheer power and discipline of the pack. Gunnar, wiping the sweat from his brow, stepped forward to address the group. His eyes scanned the soldiers, his voice calm but commanding. Listen up, all of you. What you've seen here today is classified. The team you faced, and everything you witnessed, needs to remain a secret. This operation and the existence of my team are not to be discussed outside this group. As he spoke, a ripple of understanding passed through the gathered soldiers. They knew they had seen something extraordinary, something that went far beyond the bounds of a normal training exercise. There was no protest, no need for further explanation, just quiet nods of agreement as they understood the gravity of the situation. From the back of the group, a female voice called out confidently, "No problem, sir." Gunnar paused, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He knew that voice. He turned to see Reagan Hayes, a figure from his past, stepping forward through the crowd. Her presence felt like a jolt of nostalgia mixed with a wave of pride. She now wore the rank of lieutenant colonel, her uniform crisp, but her smile familiar. "Reagan," Gunnar said, his voice softening as he walked toward her. Reagan Hayes had been an integral part of the old agency, working closely with Gunnar, Jewel, Ashley, and Clora. She had been a liaison to the army and one of the few people who truly understood the nature of their work. After the downfall of the agency, she had been reassigned, but seeing her now, it was clear that time hadn't dulled their connection. Gunnar enveloped her in a hug, a rare display of emotion. She hugged him back tightly, the bond between them evident. "It's good to see you, Gunnar," Reagan said warmly, her voice carrying a sense of familiarity and loyalty. Jewel and Ashley, standing nearby, shared in the moment, both of them stepping forward to greet Reagan with hugs of their own. The years of working together had forged strong ties, and seeing her again felt like a reunion of sorts, a reminder of the battles they'd fought side by side. "Lieutenant Colonel, huh?" Jewel teased, looking at Reagan's new rank with a smirk. "Moving up in the world, I see." Ashley chimed in, her eyes bright with recognition. "It's been too long, Reagan. Feels like old times." Clora stepped forward too, offering a nod of respect to Reagan. Though Clora had taken on a leadership role in the pack, she recognized the importance of Reagan's past contributions. Reagan had been instrumental in keeping the military and the agency aligned during those chaotic years, and her presence here now, though unexpected, felt like a missing piece falling back into place. Reagan grinned, glancing down at her new insignia. "Well, somebody has to keep things running smoothly out here, and it looks like you all haven't changed much. Still out here kicking ass and taking names." Gunnar chuckled, crossing his arms. "You know us. Can't stay out of trouble for too long." The mood was light, but there was an undercurrent of seriousness as the group gathered around. The OpFor soldiers, though fascinated by the reunion, were clearly ready to move out, giving the team space to talk amongst themselves. Sergeant Major Keek, watching from the side, stepped forward. "All right, people, you've all seen enough for today. Get yourselves squared away and head back to the barracks. You'll debrief tomorrow." He gave a sharp nod to the soldiers, who saluted and began to file out. As the soldiers departed, Eliana stepped closer, her silver eyes observing the reunion with quiet wisdom. "It seems old bonds run deep," she said, her voice carrying a subtle weight. Gunnar nodded, his eyes still on Reagan. "They do, and we're going to need those bonds if we're going to get through what's coming." The group stood in the cool evening air, the sun beginning to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the training grounds. With the exercise officially over, they took a moment to reflect, not just on the day's victory, but on the bigger picture. There were still many battles to fight, and though this had been a training exercise, it was a reminder of how much stronger they were together. "All right," Gunnar said, breaking the silence. "Let's head back to camp and get ready for whatever comes next." But first... He turned back to Regan, a glint of curiosity in his eyes. What brings you here, Regan? I can't imagine you're just passing through. Regan smiled knowingly. Let's just say there's more to discuss than just old times, Gunner. But we'll get to that soon enough. With that, the team, reunited with an old friend and strengthened by the day's exercise, made their way back to camp. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, of more to come, but for now they savoured the rare moment of victory and camaraderie.
Well, you found your way to the end, haven't you? That must mean you're curious, and we love curiosity around here. Before you vanish into the ether, take a moment to subscribe. It's just a click, and trust me, you'll want to stay in the loop for what comes next. And while you're at it, give the video a like. The energy exchange is good for you. Hit that notification bell too. You wouldn't want to miss out on any of our magical misadventures. Who knows what I might conjure up next? Alright, off you go. But remember, I'll know if you didn't subscribe. See you on the other side.